"So you want to annoy your HOA president?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Let's just say I want to enhance the neighborhood's aesthetic," I replied with a wink. Esmeralda grinned. "I like your style." We settled on a price, and she agreed to deliver my new, feathered friend the following week. He was magnificent. He was ridiculous. He was perfect. And he was about to become Linda Davenport's worst nightmare, I thought, feeling a surge of triumphant glee. "He's a bit spirited," Esmeralda said, brushing herself off. "Just let him roam. He'll settle in." My backyard wasn't exactly a sprawling farm, but it was my sanctuary. Tucked away behind the standard-issue suburban house was a small, well-maintained chicken coop, painted a cheerful, and, I later learned, highly controversial, shade of red. Inside resided my flock. Henrietta, a plump Rhode Island red, Goldie, a shimmering buff Orpington, Beatrice, a sassy little silky, and Luna, a speckled Sussex with a penchant for escaping. They weren't just egg-laying machines. They were my feathered companions, each with their own quirky personality. It wasn't much. Just a small coop, a little patch of grass, and 4 of the friendliest hens you'd ever meet. But it was my little slice of rural paradise, right here in the heart of suburbia. Fresh eggs every morning, the gentle clucking. It was perfect, I thought, watching them scratch and peck contentedly in the morning sun. The simple routine of collecting warm eggs, scattering scratch, and listening to their soft clucking was a calming ritual, a welcome contrast to the pressures of daily life. Of course, in a neighborhood ruled by the iron fist of the HOA, nothing good can last forever. I just didn't realize how quickly that forever would come to an end. The knock on the door was sharp, insistent, and utterly devoid of joy. I knew even before I opened it who it was. Linda Davenport. Picture a woman whose natural habitat is a beige-on-beige living room, whose favorite pastime is measuring her neighbor's grass with a ruler, and whose spirit animal is a tightly wound ball of yarn. She was the president of the Maplewood Estates HOA, and she ruled our little suburban kingdom with an iron fist and a seemingly endless supply of passive-aggressive notes. She stood on my porch, a vision of tightly controlled disapproval, her perfectly coiffed gray hair unyielding to the gentle breeze, her lips pursed in a perpetual expression of displeasure. "Mr. Henderson," she began, her voice as crisp and starched as her perfectly ironed blouse, "I'm afraid we have a situation." She paused, letting the word hang in the air like a threat. "It has come to the attention of the Homeowners Association that you are harboring poultry on your property." She said poultry as if it were a synonym for biohazard. "They're chickens, Linda," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "They're pets, and they lay delicious eggs." "They're barnyard animals, Mr. Henderson," she retorted, her eyes narrowing. "They're noisy, they're messy, and they're simply not in keeping with the aesthetic of Maplewood Estates. They attract undesirables." I'm pretty sure the undesirables she was referring to were earthworms and the occasional ladybug. The HOA meeting was held, as always, in the community center's multi-purpose room, a space that reeked of stale coffee and simmering resentment. Linda Davenport, perched at the head table like a queen on her throne, presided over the proceedings with an air of grim determination. The agenda was, as usual, a laundry list of petty grievances and absurd regulations. There was a heated debate about the proper placement of trash cans on Collection Day. Apparently, placing them on the curb before 6 p.m. was a flagrant violation of community standards. There was a lengthy discussion about the unacceptable color of Mrs. Gable's new mailbox. It was too vibrant and distracting. And then, of course, came the main event, my chickens. Linda launched into a prepared speech, her voice dripping with righteous indignation. "These chickens," she declared, projecting photos of my harmless hens onto the screen, "are a menace to our community. They're noisy. They attract pests. They make us look like a farm." The horror in her voice was almost comical. "A farm? 4 chickens in a well-maintained coop make us look like a farm?" I thought, my internal monologue growing increasingly sarcastic. She went on to cite obscure bylaws, misinterpret zoning regulations, and generally paint a picture of my backyard as a chaotic, disease-ridden wasteland. The other HOA members, a collection of mostly timid and easily intimidated individuals, nodded along with her every word. There was no debate, no discussion, no consideration of the fact that my chickens were well cared for, quiet, compared to Linda, at least, and a source of genuine joy. The motion to ban all backyard chickens, effective immediately, passed with a unanimous vote, except for mine, of course. Linda's power was absolute, her grip on the neighborhood unyielding. The next few days were a blur of sadness and frustration. I had to find a new home for Henrietta, Goldie, Beatrice, and Luna. I contacted local farms, animal shelters, and even a few sympathetic friends, desperately searching for a place where my beloved hens would be safe and well cared for. Finally, I found a small, family-run farm a few towns over, where the owners promised to give them a good life. The day I drove them to their new home was one of the hardest I'd had in a long time. Saying goodbye to the girls was harder than I thought. They weren't just chickens. They were part of the family. And now, thanks to Linda and her beige brigade, they were gone, I thought, watching them disappear down the long, dusty driveway. I returned to a quiet, empty backyard. The coop, once filled with the gentle clucking and scratching of my hens, was now silent and desolate. It was a constant, painful reminder of Linda's victory, of the HOA's power, and of my own helplessness. But as I stood there, staring at the empty coop, a new feeling began to emerge, a spark of defiance, a flicker of rebellion. I couldn't bring back my chickens, not yet, anyway. But I could do something. I could find a way to fight back, to exploit the HOA's own ridiculous rules, to turn their obsession with aesthetics against them. "Linda Davenport, you want a war on poultry? You've got one. Prepare for the Peacock," I vowed internally, a plan as audacious as it was feathered, beginning to hatch in my mind. My first step was research. I needed ammunition, a weapon, a legal loophole that would allow me to unleash my feathered fury upon Linda Davenport and the HOA. I spent hours poring over the HOA bylaws, a document so dense and convoluted that it could induce a coma in even the most enthusiastic lawyer. I scanned through sections on landscaping, exterior decorations, and nuisance animals, searching for any clause, any phrase, any vaguely worded sentence that I could exploit. And then I found it. Tucked away in a subsection titled Prohibited Animals was a list of specifically banned creatures: dogs exceeding 40 pounds, cats exceeding 3 in number, pigs, goats, sheep, and other livestock, and, of course, chickens, roosters, and other poultry. But there was no mention of exotic birds, no mention of ornamental pets, no mention of peacocks. It was like finding a secret passage in a video game, a hidden loophole just waiting to be exploited, and I was about to exploit it in the most spectacular way possible, I thought, a triumphant grin spreading across my face. The bylaws were specific, and specific was good. It meant there was wiggle room. It meant there was hope. It meant I could unleash a feathered fiend upon Sunridge Estates, and there wasn't a damn thing Linda Davenport could do about it. With the loophole identified, It was time to move on to Phase 2, Operation Peacock. I dove headfirst into the world of peafowl, a world I hadn't even known existed a few days earlier. I learned about their different breeds, their dietary needs, their mating rituals, and most importantly, their vocalizations. My browser history went from best chicken breeds for beginners to how loud is a peacock and legal to own peacock in state in record time. I chuckled, scrolling through pages of information. I discovered that peacocks were indeed very loud. Their calls, described as piercing, ear-splitting, and reminiscent of a woman screaming, could be heard for miles. Perfect. I found a local breeder who specialized in exotic birds, a woman named Esmeralda who had a voice like a foghorn and a collection of feathered creatures that would make a zoo jealous. She was initially skeptical of my request. A peacock in suburbia? But she warmed up to the idea when I explained my situation. "So, you want to annoy your HOA president?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Let's just say I want to enhance the neighborhood's aesthetic," I replied with a wink. Esmeralda grinned. "I like your style." We settled on a price, and she agreed to deliver my new, feathered friend the following week. The day Sir Reginald the Magnificent arrived was a day I'll never forget. Esmeralda pulled up in a large, custom-built trailer emblazoned with the words, "Feathered Friends Exotic Bird Transport." The neighbors, drawn by the unusual vehicle, gathered on their lawns, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Esmeralda, a woman who clearly enjoyed a bit of drama, opened the trailer door with a flourish. And there he was, Sir Reginald the Magnificent. He was breathtaking. A fully grown Indian blue peacock with a shimmering iridescent blue neck and chest and a tail fan that stretched for what seemed like miles, a cascade of emerald green and sapphire blue eyes. He was larger than I'd expected, more vibrant, more regal. He looked like he belonged in a palace, not a suburban backyard. He was magnificent. He was ridiculous. He was perfect. And he was about to become Linda Davenport's worst nightmare, I thought, feeling a surge of triumphant glee. The delivery process was interesting. Sir Reginald, it turned out, was not a fan of being confined. He emerged from the trailer with a series of squawks and a flurry of feathers, nearly taking out Esmeralda in the process. "He's a bit spirited," Esmeralda said, brushing herself off. "Just let him roam. He'll settle in." The delivery driver looked from me to the bird to the surrounding houses and back to me, pure bewilderment. You sure about this, man?" "Never been more sure of anything in my life." He shrugged, climbed back into the cab, and drove off, leaving me to contemplate the majestic chaos I had unleashed. Sir Reginald, true to Esmeralda's word, immediately began to explore his new domain. He strutted across my lawn, his tail feathers fanned out in all their glory, his head held high, as if surveying his kingdom. He pecked at the grass, investigated the flower beds, and generally behaved as if he owned the place, which, in a way, he now did. He refused to be confined to the old chicken coop. He had no interest in fences, boundaries, or any other form of human-imposed restriction. He was a free spirit, a feathered monarch, and he was going to roam wherever he pleased. The neighbors, initially apprehensive, were quickly captivated. Children pointed and giggled, adults stared in open-mouthed wonder, and even the dogs seemed to be intimidated by his regal presence. He was a walking, squawking, iridescent spectacle, a splash of exotic beauty in the otherwise mundane landscape of Sunridge Estates. And then, of course, came the encounter with Linda Davenport. It happened on Sir Reginald's first morning in the neighborhood. He'd decided, for reasons known only to himself, that Linda's front porch was the perfect spot for his sunrise serenade. He perched majestically on the railing, directly in front of her living room window, and, at the precise moment the sun crested the horizon, he let out a piercing, ear-splitting screech. It was a sound that could wake the dead, a primal scream that echoed through the quiet, unsuspecting streets of Sunridge Estates. I watched from my kitchen window, sipping my coffee, a smile playing on my lips. The war had begun, and Sir Reginald the Magnificent was leading the charge. The sound of Linda Davenport's scream, even from across the street, was enough to make me spill my coffee. I peered out the window, and there it was, the confrontation I'd been eagerly anticipating. Linda, in her perfectly pressed pastel bathrobe and slippers, was standing on her porch, pointing a trembling finger at Sir Reginald the Magnificent, who was perched regally on her meticulously maintained rose bush, casually pecking at a prize-winning bloom. That thing is a menace, she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that could shatter glass. It's loud, it's disruptive, and it's peacocking all over the neighborhood. She seemed particularly offended by the verb peacocking. As if Sir Reginald's very existence was a personal affront to her, I strolled out onto my porch, a mug of coffee in hand, a picture of serene innocence. "Good morning, Linda," I said, my voice dripping with faux concern. "Is there a problem?" "A problem?" she repeated, her eyes bulging. "A problem, Mr. Henderson, that creature is destroying my garden. It's screeching like a banshee. It's unacceptable." "He's expressing himself, Linda," I corrected her gently. "It's called freedom of expression. Perhaps you've heard of it. He's also providing valuable pest control. Peacocks are known for their appetite for insects, you know." "I'll have it removed," she declared, her face now a shade of purple that clashed violently with her pink bathrobe. "I'll call animal control. I'll call the police. Go ahead," I said, taking a leisurely sip of my coffee. "I've already checked. He's perfectly legal. He's classified as an ornamental pet, and there are no HOA bylaws prohibiting exotic birds. You banned chickens, Linda, not peacocks." Watching Linda's face turn that familiar shade of purple was worth every penny I'd spent on Sir Reginald. It was a masterpiece of suburban schadenfreude, I thought, struggling to suppress a grin. She sputtered, she fumed, she threatened, but it was all for naught. Sir Reginald, meanwhile, continued to dismantle her rose bush, one prize-winning bloom at a time, seemingly oblivious to the chaos he was causing. The emergency HOA meeting, called by a clearly desperate Linda Davenport, was a spectacle of panicked disarray. The usually orderly community center was filled with a buzz of anxious whispers and nervous glances. Linda, looking like she hadn't slept in days, stood at the podium, her face pale and drawn, her usually impeccable hair slightly askew. This peacock," she began, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and exhaustion, "is a threat to our community. It's loud, it's destructive, and it's unpredictable." She projected a series of blurry photos onto the screen. Sir Reginald perched on her roof, Sir Reginald strutting through her garden, Sir Reginald staring menacingly into her kitchen window. She proposed an immediate and total ban on all non-domesticated avian species within Sunridge Estates, a motion clearly targeted at Sir Reginald. But this time, her usual iron grip on the HOA seemed to be slipping. There were murmurs of dissent, hesitant questions, and even a few outright expressions of amusement. "He's kind of beautiful, though, isn't he?" Mrs. Gable said tentatively. "My grandkids love him," Mr. Henderson added. "They call him Reggie." Even some of Linda's most loyal supporters seemed to be wavering. The peacock, it turned out, was more popular than she'd anticipated. The meeting, instead of being a swift condemnation of Sir Reginald, devolved into a chaotic debate, with Linda's increasingly shrill pronouncements being met with a growing wave of resistance. Sir Reginald the Magnificent, meanwhile, was becoming a local celebrity. The local newspaper, the Sunridge Estates Gazette, ran a front-page story about him, titled, "The Fabulous Peacock of Maplewood Estates." The article described him as a flamboyant and feathered resident who has captured the hearts of the community, and included several photos of him strutting through the neighborhood, his tail feathers shimmering in the sun. Then came the TikTok trend. Someone posted a video of Sir Reginald chasing a mail truck set to a catchy pop song, and it went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments, and a sudden influx of Peacock-related hashtags. Reginald the Peacock, Peacock Life, #Suburban Safari. Local businesses started capitalizing on his fame. A bakery created a Reginald-themed cupcake, decorated with blue and green frosting and edible glitter. A clothing store started selling Reginald Fan Club t-shirts, featuring a cartoon image of the peacock wearing a crown. Even the mayor, sensing a PR opportunity, posted a photo of himself with Sir Reginald on his official social media account, praising the peacock for bringing a touch of exotic beauty and much-needed levity to our town. Linda, of course, was furious. She'd become a laughingstock, her attempts to maintain order and conformity thwarted by a single, spectacularly flamboyant bird. The contrast between the online praise for Sir Reginald and Linda's increasingly desperate outrage was both hilarious and deeply satisfying. Linda's attempts to have Sir Reginald removed through official channels were met with a series of increasingly frustrating roadblocks. She called animal control multiple times, but each time they arrived, they found Sir Reginald to be well cared for, perfectly legal, and, frankly, quite charming. The animal control officers, after posing for a few pictures with him, would leave, leaving Linda fuming on her porch. Then came the Wildlife Preservation Society. A local chapter, alerted to Sir Reginald's presence by the viral social media posts, contacted me, offering their support. They declared Sir Reginald a bird of interest. Apparently, peacocks weren't technically endangered, but they were still considered worthy of protection, and they warned the HOA that any attempt to harm or relocate him would be met with swift legal action. Linda was trapped. She couldn't ban him through the HOA, she couldn't have him removed by animal control, and she couldn't even complain about him without risking the wrath of the Wildlife Preservation Society. Sir Reginald the Magnificent, my feathered weapon of choice, had proven to be legally untouchable, a walking, squawking, peacocking embodiment of HOA defiance, and there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it. Linda's next desperate move was to call animal control. She reported a dangerous, aggressive, and excessively loud bird terrorizing the neighborhood, hoping to have Sir Reginald removed on grounds of public nuisance or some other trumped-up charge. The animal control officer, a weary-looking man named Bob, arrived at my door, clipboard in hand, expecting to find a rampaging beast. Instead, he found Sir Reginald the Magnificent calmly pecking at the grass in my front yard, looking about as threatening as a fluffy blue and green lawn ornament. "That's him?" Bob asked, pointing at Sir Reginald with a slightly bewildered expression. "That's him," I confirmed. Bob spent the next half hour observing Sir Reginald, checking his condition, and asking me a series of questions about his care. He concluded that the peacock was perfectly healthy, well-fed, and, despite his impressive size and occasional ear-splitting screeches, not a threat to anyone. "Peacocks are legal to own in this state, ma'am," Bob informed Linda, who had been hovering nearby, her face a mask of frustrated rage. "And this one seems to be well cared for. There's nothing I can do." He tipped his hat to me, gave Sir Reginald a final, admiring glance, and drove away, leaving Linda sputtering in his wake. The final, crushing blow to Linda's anti-Peacock campaign came from an unexpected source, the Sunridge Estates Wildlife Preservation Society, SUPES, a small but dedicated group of local nature enthusiasts. They'd been following the Sir Reginald saga with great interest, and they decided to intervene. They sent a letter to the HOA declaring Sir Reginald a bird of interest and a valuable addition to the local ecosystem. They argued that peacocks, while not native to the area, were beneficial for pest control and provided a unique opportunity for residents to observe and appreciate exotic wildlife. They even hinted at the possibility of declaring Sir Reginald a protected species. A slight exaggeration, but effective nonetheless, which would make any attempt to remove him a legal nightmare. Linda, faced with the prospect of battling not only me and the increasingly pro-Peacock neighborhood, but also a group of determined wildlife advocates, finally realized she was defeated. The SUPs, with their earnest enthusiasm and their arsenal of nature-related facts, had become my unlikely allies, providing the final layer of protection for my feathered friend. The end came swiftly and decisively. Linda Davenport, the once mighty queen of the Maplewood Estates HOA, resigned in disgrace. Her resignation letter was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive self-pity, blaming everyone but herself for her downfall. She claimed she was the victim of a coordinated campaign of harassment, a witch hunt orchestrated by unruly elements within the community. Nobody bought it. Within a month, a for sale sign appeared in front of her perfectly manicured and now peacock-free lawn. She sold her house at a slight loss. The market, it seemed, was not as enthusiastic about beige-on-beige conformity as she was, and moved away, presumably to inflict her brand of joyless tyranny on some other unsuspecting neighborhood. The news of her departure was met with a collective sigh of relief, followed by a spontaneous neighborhood block party held naturally in my backyard with Sir Reginald the Magnificent as the guest of honor. With Linda gone, the HOA underwent a dramatic transformation. The old guard was replaced by a new, more progressive and pro-Peacock leadership. The bylaws were revised, the emphasis shifting from strict conformity to fostering a sense of community and celebrating individual expression. Sir Reginald the Magnificent, once a source of controversy, became the official mascot of Maplewood Estates. His image appeared on the neighborhood website, on community newsletters, and even on a new, redesigned welcome sign. The neighborhood had embraced its feathered overlord, and the HOA, once a symbol of oppression, was now a champion of peacock-related pride. The change extended to the renaming of streets. One was even, no joke, named Reginald's Run. The HOA even voted to use dues to commission a local artist to create a bronze statue of Sir Reginald. Life in Maplewood Estates settled into a new, more colorful normal. Every morning, I'd sit on my porch, sipping my coffee, watching Sir Reginald the Magnificent strut through the neighborhood, his tail feathers shimmering in the sunlight. He'd often perch on the roof of Linda's former house, a particularly satisfying sight, as if claiming his territory, asserting his dominance over the once forbidden kingdom. The neighbors, once wary of his presence, now greeted him with smiles and offerings of treats. Peacocks, it turned out, have a particular fondness for grapes. He'd become a part of the community, a beloved, if slightly eccentric, resident. Who knew that a few chickens and a burning desire for revenge could lead to all this? I guess sometimes you just gotta get a peacock to find your peace, I thought, watching him let out a triumphant screech that echoed through the streets. I raised my coffee mug in a silent toast. To Sir Reginald the Magnificent, may his reign be long, loud, and utterly infuriating to all future Karens.